Let me introduce you to the speaker for the day. We have with us Miss Lea Gracilla. She is a principal of a private special needs school in the Philippines. Ma'am has more than 12 years of experience teaching special needs children, both in public and private schools. Ma'am has conducted various training sessions and seminars on teaching strategies for students with autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, learning disability, behavioral problem, intellectual disability, and other related disabilities. MAM provides integrated guidance and counseling in the field of special education to parents of children with special needs. Her other skills include conducting a psychoeducational assessment, a functional behavioral assessment, IEP planning, and development of behavioral intervention plan, and also how one can implement that program of special needs. Ma'am is also a member of two international honorable societies. It's a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. Before I hand over it to ma'am, I would like to inform you all that the session is for 2 hours. 1 hour of knowledge sharing by the expert speaker, and the other hour where all your queries would be answered by the expert speaker. And I also want to inform you that after 5 to 10 minutes, the chat settings would be shifted to the hosts and panelists. Wishing you all a very happy learning. Over to you, Lea, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Shivani, for that introduction. I am truly grateful for this opportunity to discuss. Let me share my screen. Okay, is my screen clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so again, I am truly grateful for this opportunity to discuss about academic challenges relating to learners at risk, intellectual disability, and behavioral conditions. I also want to welcome all the participants. I saw in the chat box, they're coming from the Philippines, Malaysia, Bhutan, other Singapore. I also saw Dubai. Your active participation and excitement for all the workshops here at EBLIT inspire us to do better in sharing relevant information that you can use in the inclusive classroom. So I hope that you will learn something today that would be of value to you, your child, or the students that you teach. Okay, so let me begin by discussing the overview of the modules. So we are now on module 4, which is about academic challenges and identification. The previous workshop was about learning disabilities, and today we are going to cover 4 more conditions. And the next workshops will be about assessment tools to determine learning challenges. In the future, topic on academic and classroom intervention will be discussed under module 5, and this would zero in cognitive, handwriting, remedial English, and remedial math interventions, respectively. Again, as mentioned, the previous workshop was about specific learning disabilities. So these are students who have difficulty understanding and applying academic skills due to some information processing issues. So some of the academic areas affected by these conditions are reading, writing, and arithmetic, to name a few. And that is why early intervention is very important to be able to target the necessary needs of these learners. And to manage these challenges, we need to have a holistic approach to be able to give intervention or methods that could address these learners' academic challenges. Meanwhile, for this workshop, I will be discussing about the definitions, red flags, and individual characteristics of learners at risk, intellectual disability, ADHD, and ASD. I will also be giving some light about the general and specific academic challenges, as well as the overlapping characteristics and behavioral issues. Moving on, I will be giving some useful tips and strategies to manage these academic challenges. There will also be some case scenarios wherein I would need your active participation, by the way. And lastly is the summary and takeaways. Okay, so what then are academic challenges? So these are challenges that hinder a child's academic performance, affecting their ability to meet the academic requirements and expectations. Okay, so these are the factors and conditions affecting academic performance. We have learners at risk, or the struggling learners, those with intellectual disability, or learners who have low intellectual functioning, or they have problems with understanding concepts. Next is autism spectrum disorder, or learners with social communication deficits and behavior problems. And also attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, who are learners having problems with attention and some hyperactive and impulsive behaviors. Okay, so learners at risk is categorized into many classification. That is why it is so difficult to put them into one category. So for this presentation, I will be only focusing on struggling learners who are struggling academically. Okay. So struggling learners are students who are part of the general education classroom. So they are the students who are at risk of academic failure due to some factors, which I will discuss further. There are also these students who fail some of their subjects because they cannot cope with the academic demands. And since they cannot cope with it, it does not necessarily mean that they have low intellectual functioning. In fact, some of them have average intellectual ability, but they perform poorly with academics, and they manifest low academic motivation. In the Philippines and some of the third world countries, they account for the greatest number of students who are at risk of dropping out. Therefore, there is high failure rate in the general education setting. Okay, so these are some possible red flags affecting the academic performance of struggling learners. Okay, so there are two aspects encompassing the environmental factors. First is lack of resources, and the other one is lack of awareness. So in terms of the environmental factors, for example, at home, one of the factors why students drop out of school is because of financial resources. Okay, so because of the lack in financial resources, many of these learners do not get the proper nutrition that they need in order to fuel their brain for learning to take place. Some of them cannot focus during classroom discussions or during lectures because they are starving. Another factor is household responsibilities. Many of these learners, like for example, at an early age, they need to work, or they need to take care of their younger siblings, thus missing their classes. In effect, they fall academically behind their classmates or their peers. Another factor is, in terms of awareness, is the parents' negative attitude towards education. And this is because of the lack of education, or what we call they have low educational attainment. Also, with poor parenting skills and lack of parental support, these all factors contribute to the student's academic failure. Another one example is, or factor is in school. So in terms of resources, there is also lack in funding. For example, to fund or to support infrastructures that would meet the requirements of these learners. Another factor would be the curriculum content, which can be too lengthy, too hard, or the pacing is just too fast for the students to meet. And in terms of awareness, some of the factors are like lack of teachers training, or teachers do not have the knowledge and competency in using teaching methods and strategies. And also other lack of skills in conducting assessments. So these factors also contribute to the low academic motivation of these learners. In terms of community, factors such as also, again, lack of funding from the government, for example, and this affects the students in terms of like they do not get the proper support from the community, as well as in terms of awareness, there is lack of acceptance in the society or in the community. Therefore, putting this together, all these factors, it would really affect these learners. Okay, in terms of social and emotional factors, we have frustration and low self-esteem. These two affects also the academic motivation of these students because of their repeated failure with academics. They always fail, so they will have low self-esteem or low self-efficacy. And lastly is personal factors, like most of these learners have undetected disability like intellectual disability, or they have poor cognitive ability like mild intellectual disability. And also they may have long illnesses which prevents them from attending classes and thus not finishing the whole school year. Again, the negative attitude towards education is acquired from their parents. Okay, so these are the general academic challenges of these learners. First, we have academic motivation deficits. Again, this is due to the cycle of academic failure. And they also have problems with processing abstract concept, especially with high schoolers. Algebra is one of the required subjects to be able to graduate, and most of these learners do not pass this subject since it's very abstract. So they are then required to take remedial classes, or either to be repeating the same grade level, or they just completely drop out of school out of frustration. Their problems with generalizing skills has to do with because they have lack in resources or lack of experiences or exposures to different settings because of the factors I have mentioned. They have also difficulty generalizing or applying what they learned in one particular subject, for example, to others. Making transition in this case would mean that they do not get promoted. So some of them do not reach grade 6 or in high school grade 10 because of again failure with the academic subjects. And also since they have all these challenges on them, they have difficulty setting long-term goals, as well as planning and managing time. So they do not have this motivation to finish or to have a certain goal for their academic success. Okay, we now come on the next topic, which is the intellectual disability, another condition that we're going to discuss. So in DSM-5, the term intellectual developmental disorder is used to indicate that this condition involve impaired functioning early in life. And the onset is during the developmental period. This includes both intellectual, meaning learning, problem solving, and reasoning, and adaptive functioning deficits such as social, communication, and practical skills. And this is classified as mild, moderate, severe, and profound. By the way, children having mild intellectual disability could be placed in the regular classroom setting since their intellectual functioning is a bit higher than those with moderate and severe and profound. So they can be included in the regular classroom. But for those with moderate, severe, and profound, they usually are placed in special education services or in self-contained classroom. So these are the red flags of intellectual disability. First, they have problems with social communication skills. So they have trouble making friends, not because they do not want to socialize. It is because of their problems with communication. So they cannot express what they want, what they need, and also most of the time, they are being misunderstood because they do not manifest socially accepted behavior in various social settings. And also they have problems with cognitive processing. This means because of their low intellectual functioning, they have inability to understand concepts or to understand higher order thinking skills lessons. Also, they have problems understanding new or complex information. So this has to do with assimilating information, meaning integrating their previously known knowledge or skills into new situations, for example. And also, they have problems with processing sequential information. So it has to do with their executive functioning also. Okay, so these are the academic challenges relating to intellectual disability. First, we have language challenges. These children have poor memory and retention. That is why it is hard for them to recall the details in a story as well as retell the story to others. In terms of speech fluency, they have problems with language production, such as sounding out letters, sounding out words, or putting the letters together for it to blend and to sound out. In terms of understanding the meaning of words, they have poor vocabulary skills, and also even the simpler words, they have problems understanding it. Also, they have problems with carrying out directions. Most of these children could only take like one-step direction, and you have to repeat it to them for them to be able to perform it. Another one is comprehending parts of speech. Again, these learners learn in a concrete fashion, meaning they have to use all their senses, like vision, auditory, tactile, to be able to learn. And parts of speech is such a complex topic for them. Okay, next we have the learning challenges. So for this one, again, they have difficulty understanding the relationship between letters, sounds, or words and ideas. Their reading may be also slow because of their delayed processing issues. Therefore, it also affects their reading fluency. And again, the vocabulary skills are very poor. Okay, in terms of math, the challenges are in understanding numeracy and money concepts. So this one has to do with their memory and their ability to understand. And this is very important for children with intellectual disability, because without it, they cannot perform daily living skills. For example, purchasing items. So since they do not have a concept of the value of money, so it's hard for them to say, to identify or to recognize which bill should I give the cashier. And also, since they have difficulty with numbers, they're not able to check if what items or if the items they bought are complete. Okay, so also they have problems with sequencing days and months. So for this one, they might get confused with Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, like that. And also, due to this inability or problem, they may not, or they may miss classes, events. They even forget about their birthdays. So if you ask them, when is your birthday? They may not be able to answer you. Also, they have problems with memorizing and organizing numbers and math facts. So with this one, if when they have organizing issues, it's hard for them to use this into real life situation also. So it's hard for them to apply it in real life. Like I have a student before that it took him 3 months just to recognize numbers 1 to 5, only to find out that on the 4th month, he completely forgot about everything, and I have to reteach it to him all over again. Okay, so another one is problem with conceptualizing time. So they can be late in classes, or they may submit their projects or their assignments late because they do not have the concepts of like yesterday, today, tomorrow. So that's where the problem comes in. And lastly is understanding abstract thought. Again, they have we need to give them concrete lessons, like they can touch something or they can see it and use their senses to be able to understand a particular lesson. Okay, in terms of writing, the problems are with the physical activity of writing. For example, forming letters, words, and written expression. They may also have poor handwriting skills, or the writing could be illegible. For example, you're going to ask them to write, for example, the word boy. Okay, so sometimes they write it like big letter B and then smaller O like that, and then big letter Y. So they're having problems also with fine motor. Sometimes it's because of fine motors, and sometimes it's because they just don't discriminate letters or words, and also maybe because they lack focus as well, and they have spatial issues also. Also, they have problems with copying letters and words with accuracy. Again, this has to do with their difficulty in discriminating letters. And by the way, some of these learners also have co-occurring conditions such as learning disability. So they might omit letters in a word, or they may also reverse letters. So that is the most common problems with these learners. Also, they have problems with spelling. So this one has to do with their working memory, meaning they could not hold their thoughts while also making another activity. So in spelling, you need to think about the letters of a word for you to spell, and at the same time, you have to write it or to say it orally. So that's where the problem comes in. Also, they have problems with coherence and organization. So they tend to be, their writings tend to be some sort of not consistent or not coherent. Okay, in terms of reasoning, problems are with logical thinking. So it's hard for them to tell how or why something happened, for example. And then due to this one, they also have problems with discrimination, for example, of facts and fiction. And they tend to be gullible, or they easily believe something or someone without even checking the evidences or the facts behind that statement, for example. And because of this characteristic, they are at risk of social manipulation. Okay, now these are the challenges in terms of intellectual disability. They also have problems with motor skills, such as they are generally uncoordinated. They may look awkward or clumsy in certain situations wherein they need to move or to use their locomotor skills and gross motor skills. Also, they have age inappropriate movements. So I have a student again before. She's already old, like 40 years old, but she's still in school because she wants to be in school. And she always asked me to play like nursery rhymes with our songs and dance steps, which are for younger kids. And then she likes doing it because that's the only movements that she can do. Also, they have problems with poor hand-eye coordination. So this manifests in like fine motor skills of writing, or like in the early years of development, this could be manifested by the child not being able to like button a shirt or zipping and other fine motor tasks. And also with this can be manifested by the child not being able to catch a ball. So something like that. And then we also have problems with rhythm and movement. So again, this has to do with their poor coordination and poor balance in general. So with poor balance, they may be exposed or at risk for accidents. And these motor skills are very important also for them to like pass the subjects in physical education, because in physical education, you need to perform like dances or plays a certain sport. Okay, so next we have sensory processing challenges like visual processing issues. So it's hard for them to discriminate what they see or to understand what they see. For example, they cannot discriminate which is basketball or which is volleyball, because for them it's just circle. And due to their low intellectual ability also, it's hard for them to understand certain things that they see. Also, they have problems with auditory processing, which affects their ability to follow instructions. With sound discrimination, they may have problems with discriminating certain sounds, like the sound of the difference of the sound of the alarm clock with the sound of a fire alarm. So if they do not understand or they do not know this, it would put them, or their safety would be compromised. And they also have delayed processing in most areas of the sensory, or in all areas of like memory and retention. Okay, next we have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Okay, so DSM-5 defined ADHD as persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity, impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. It is characterized by inattention and or hyperactivity and impulsivity. Okay, so these are the red flags of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. For this part, I'm going to give some examples to illustrate the different warning signs. First, for this inattentive type, these red flags could be manifested when a child is taking an exam. So the child may have difficulty answering the questions because he has an inability to pay attention to details, therefore committing careless mistakes, especially with following instructions or directions. For example, the direction is for the child to encircle the synonym of the underlined word. However, the child underlined the antonyms. The child might get a lower score in the exam, not because he doesn't know the answer, but because he did not comply with the instructions. Another factor or another red flag is lack of focus on task behavior. So these learners um, might not able to get the context of the instructions or the questions because they may skip a certain word, therefore not completely understanding the whole question. And also lack of attention when they are called. This can be identified when, for example, you call a child and then he doesn't seem to listen or to hear you because his mind is wandering somewhere else. So these children usually space out also, and they have unrelated thoughts. Okay, for the other red flags, another situation or example could be during or when a child is completing a school project. So he may be able to begin a task, but easily loses focus along the way. That's why the child might not finish that certain task or project. Also because they avoid sustained mental effort and they are easily distracted even without obvious external stimuli. And since they have difficulties in organizing tasks also, and they have difficulties with prioritizing things, it affects their ability also to organize or to remember which step I should do first, which is second, and so on. Also, they tend to be disorganized with thoughts and with their things that makes them lose things or misplace things. In their daily life situations, they may forget activities and like where he put his work or homework or projects. That's why it affects his academic performance. In terms of those with hyperactive and impulsive type, this could be manifested during recitation. So a child might fidget and squirms, get out of seat, and being unable to keep still. So the child might also have problems with remaining quiet. So in this case, during recitation, the classmates could get mad at him because they do not give time to others for others to recite. And then he may interrupt conversations and also complete other people's sentences. They also talk excessive. He may also talk excessively. So some parents and teachers describe this as being like a machine or being driven by a motor. Like they talk nonstop, even for extended period of time. And also they may blurt out answers to questions, and they lack waiting skills, especially during conversations. So they interrupt others, pick up other sentences, and they complete other sentences. And also their difficulty in turn taking. Okay, so these are the impact to academic performance of learners with ADHD. First is they do not understand the lessons because understanding a lesson requires prerequisite skills such as focus and attention, imitation, and following directions. So children with ADHD have problems with these skills. That's why it's hard for them to understand the lesson. Another one is that learning is not maximized because they have organization skills issues also. So they do not submit their work on time and they submit incomplete work. So they do not like follow certain schedules or they do not follow or they do not understand or they forget about the deadlines. Also, because of their being disorganized with the learning materials, they may not be able to turn in their works also, and then they have messy works. And also because of their inability to keep still, they may move around and disrupt the classroom. But we have to remember that this is not intentional. So without realizing it, the child is already disrupting the classroom, but it's not his intention. It is because probably of his poor executive functioning skills. Okay. Again, these are some other impacts to the academic performance of learners with ADHD. Problems with recalling information, daydreaming, and spacing out, and non-compliance to instructions are all a product of inattention and lack of focus. Whereas problems with blurting out answers, impulsive response, and lacking time awareness and management have to do with their trouble in executive functioning skills. In terms of ineligible writing, this is maybe because of their poor fine motor skills or because they lack focus as well, which makes them not able to understand what to write. Now we come to this one is the fourth disability, and it's autism spectrum disorder or ASD. Okay, so DSM-5 defined ASD as a complex developmental condition involving persistent challenges with social communication and restrictive repetitive behavior. It is considered a lifelong disorder, and the degree of impairment in functioning varies among individuals. So we have to remember that no two children with autism are alike. And this condition could persist until adulthood. So as you can see in this slide, I have here illustrations. So hypothetically, these illustrations here represents the different brain of a typical, the different brains for a typically developing child. This one in solid blue color. And then this one is the brain of a child with intellectual disability. If we compare this brain is of a normal child or typically developing. And then this one is with intellectual disability. The small circle here means that the child with intellectual disability might learn few information, or their brain is a little bit smaller than the normal brain. The implication to education is that we should give lessons or tasks which they can only they are capable of doing or performing. Like, for example, a child can do grade 1 level skills. So we are going to give him or her a grade 1 level skills in all of the subjects. But as you can see, the brain of a child with autism is like this. So it has an irregular shape. This means that a child with autism have excesses and deficits. So the implication to education is that we really need to do proper and thorough assessment to be able to identify specifically which area the child is having problems, or which are the area are his or her strengths, so that we can give proper intervention, and we can implement or give subjects to the level that the child would understand. Sorry for that. Okay, so let's now go to the red flags of autism in terms of social communication. So first is they have decreased sharing of interest with others. So most of these children do not want to share, for example, their toys, and they also play alone. Next is they have difficulty recognizing emotions, and they also do not show facial expressions, and it's hard for them to identify, let's say, what is happy or what is sad. And if you have watched or seen the movie Temple Grandin, there she was taught about emotions by taking a picture of her face with a different facial expressions showing emotion. So that's how she learned about emotions. Third is difficulty maintaining eye contact. So maintaining eye contact is a skill of that says that the child is initiating or communicating with others. So in children with autism, they do not usually, or they have problems maintaining eye contact. Number 4 is their lack of proficiency with the use of nonverbal gestures. So they have problems understanding others or understanding gestures or nonverbal cues. Next is interpreting abstract ideas literally. So they do not understand jokes because they take things seriously and literally, and also they do not understand like metaphors or figures of speech. So for example, you have to tell him good luck, and then you said break a leg, like that. So the child would not be able to understand it. So just use explicit language. And then number 6 is difficulty making friends or keeping them. This is also due to their poor social interaction. They do not initiate social interaction, and they also have problems with social overtures from others. Next, we have red flags in terms of restrictive repetitive behaviors. So these children have inflexibility of behavior. So they tend to insist on sameness, they're very rigid, and they do things repeatedly. They're obsessed with repetitions, and they tend to be very, very organized as well. Next is challenges in coping with change. So a small change, like for example, in my experience, I have a student who gets easily distressed with a certain adjustment with the time. For example, the time for the class is 2 o'clock, and then I for some reasons I was late, so I logged in at 2:01. So the child may already throw tantrums because of that certain little change in the schedule or in the time. Okay, next is difficulty with transition. They also have difficulty transitioning from one activity to another because of their rigidity as well. So, and sometimes these children manifest spillover, meaning if they already know a concept, they want to do it again and again, and their response become becomes automatic. That's why they do not want to change the activity. Next is problems with sensory hypersensitivity. So these children might have aversion to many sensory inputs like very bright lights or certain loud sounds. So they will throw tantrums, or it is very distressful for them. Next is with stereotypical movements. They also manifest repetitive movements such as flipping objects, rocking, or hand flapping. And then they are also very rigid, and they excessively need structure. Again, this has to do with their repetitions, or they line up toys, and it's hard for them to transition from one activity to another. So these are the academic challenges of learners with autism spectrum disorder. They have problems with reading. They may be good readers, they pronounce words properly, and the reading accuracy and fluency is good, but the real problem is with comprehension. So if you ask a child the details of the story, for example, who is the character, where did the story happen, they may be able to answer that. But if you let them explain why, or you ask them how, that's where the problem comes in. Next is they have problems with recalling information. This is maybe because of their lack of attention. Also, they have problems with logical reasoning, or being sensible. Again, this has to do with their inability to process how or why something is happening, or to process information that requires analyzing, summarizing, or in making inferences as well. And also they have problems answering and understanding implicit questions. This has to do again with there being, or they are taking things or questions literally, and also with making inferences, or making conclusions based on factual information. In terms of writing, some of the children have ineligible writing. This may be because of their lack of focus, or they have problems with fine motor skills. But I have to note that not all children with autism have ineligible writing. Some of them might actually be very good in writing. They might write legibly also, because some of these children also manifest obsessive compulsive disorder, which is they are very organized, and they want everything to be, for example, the sizes of the letters should be all the same, and they do not like those with erasures. Next is putting thoughts into writing. So they may have so many things in mind, but the problem is with putting them into words or expressing. So this has to do with their ability to express through writing. And also they have problems with thoughts organization. So they do not have this executive functioning skill of, for example, prioritizing what to write, what to put. And this is also related with purging thoughts and ideas, meaning they have problems with trimming down, for example, a particular topic on what they want to write. So these are the writing challenges that these learners have. Okay, next is with math. So these learners have difficulty understanding concepts, especially abstract ones. Again, since these learners learn through the different stimuli, like they need to see, they need to hear, they need to touch to be able to learn a particular concept. So in this case, abstract concept is very hard for them to learn. Next is applying concepts. Again, they have problems with generalizing skills. And also, they have problems with solving word problem. This has to do with their problems with comprehension and also with language problems. They may not be able to understand the problem. That's why they have difficulty solving for it. And also, they have problems with shifting across different problem-solving methods, like from addition, transitioning to subtraction, to multiplication and division, due to their rigidity. So they want repetition. So instead of moving on to another operation, they would insist that to do just addition. And also, this is manifested by them having automatic responses to activities or committing spillovers. Okay, so these are the general challenges of learners with autism spectrum disorder. So they have difficulty or impaired social interaction manifested in their inability to express themselves or to relate with others. They also have problems with communication. It could be expressive or receptive communication or language. They also have problems with impaired cognition, especially understanding abstract concepts, and they take things literally. And also with restrictive repetitive behavior, such as uncontrolled movements like hand flapping, rocking, flipping objects, and other uncontrolled movements. Next is sensory processing issues. Certain stimuli, sensory stimulus are aversive to them. Okay, now we come to the overlapping characteristics of these four conditions. So these are overlapping characteristics, but they are not absolute. So for the academic challenges, we have focus and attention, following instruction, and transition or adaptability to change. These all could be characteristics of those with ASD or ADHD. And then delayed processing and working memory could be characteristics of with intellectual disability, also with ADHD and ASD. And also with executive function, self-regulation, and motivation. This is also problems of these learners, including learners at risk. Okay, in terms of behavioral challenges, we have off-task behavior, getting out of seat, non-compliance, tantrums, disruptive behavior, interrupting behavior, and excessive talking. Okay, so according to studies of Beta et al. In 2018, these are the prevalence of neurodevelopmental disorders across the world, including those of learners at risk. So 22% of school-age children are diagnosed with ASD, 33% are diagnosed with ADHD, and 30 to 50% are at risk for developing behavioral and emotional problems. And more than 80% of the world's births occur in low and middle income countries. These are potentially the learners at risk. Okay, so these conditions have great impact on the academic performance of children that lead to academic challenges. That is why, again, as I mentioned in the introduction of this presentation, early intervention is a key to promoting the holistic development of these children. Okay, so what now are the general strategies and management of these academic challenges? Teachers and parents have very important roles to play in managing the academic challenges of their students and children. Teachers are especially responsible for learner accommodations and instructional modifications. And parents have roles in supporting their child's learning and collaboration with school and educators. These are the roles of teachers in terms of learner accommodation. Learner accommodation refers to how the student access materials or the curriculum. So this could be done, for example, in math, we can allow the student to use calculators. And in English, the use of laptop with autocorrect features for written assignments. And in reading, we can provide chapter summaries so that the topics would be much easier for them to understand. Next is in terms of instructional modifications. This means the altering of the materials or the curriculum. So instead of giving 2 steps or multiple steps problem solving in math, we can just give 1 step, especially for those with intellectual disability who have problems following instructions, also with ASD and ADHD. In English, we can give simplified assignments, or we can limit the topics so that it would be much easier for them to read or to cover and understand the reading material. Okay, and then in reading, we can modify the difficulty level, again, to meet the need of the particular learner. These are other accommodation examples. So we can give clear and slow instructions so that the child would be able to fully grasp the context of the instruction. And we can also allow extended time for exams, for homeworks, and for activities during classes. Also, we can use visuals, especially with children with autism and other children who are visual learners. So it would help them much if we give visual cues. Also, we can do small group testing to avoid distraction, especially with children with ADHD and ASD as well. Preferential seating. So we have to observe and look if the child needs to be placed in front of the class or at the back so that they can perform better with academics. Also, we can reduce distractions, especially for children with autism and ADHD as well. In our experience here at school, we limit the distractions in the classroom. For example, our walls are completely bare, or we do not put a lot of decoration so that they will not get distracted. Okay, and then we need also to give frequent breaks to aid in redirection of these learners. And also, we can schedule modification. Example, if the child is active in the morning and can perform better in the morning, we can give activities or exams in a schedule that is convenient for the child. Next are other modification examples. So we can have curriculum recalibration. In our case, usually the required number of lessons in a quarter is 8 lessons per quarter. But since we have students who do lessons or activities in a slower pace, we only require 6 lessons in 1 quarter. So that is how we recalibrate the curriculum. And we can also give reduced assignments to help them to make it easier for them. Also, we can give them simple problems in math so that they can solve it more or easier. And then giving hints or clues. This is a form of prompting, again, to make the lessons easier. Also with removing difficult questions on a test. And modifying grades. Alongside the numeric grades, we can also use narratives to be able to describe the performances of these learners. We can also alter the learning expectations, especially with higher order thinking skills. So since some of the students could not understand those things, we can limit the learning expectations to only those that they can perform. And lastly, allowing criterion-based assessments using rubrics and, for example, we do not only focus on the permanent product or the end product. We also focus on the process. So we also give credits for the process and the performance tasks. Okay, so these are the rules. These are the roles of parents in supporting their child's learning. First is make time to talk about school-related activities with your child. So a healthy conversation with your child without a demand or pressure with your child to perform excellent or better in school. So you can discuss with her regarding school-related activities, but without pressure. Next is understand your child's strengths and weaknesses. So we should focus on the little milestones and little progress that these children are making. So we celebrate their small milestones. Also, we need to follow up with lessons. Okay, again, consistency or practice makes consistent results. So we should be consistent in following up with lessons. Also, you can support your child with his or her homework and lessons, but do not do it for them. And also teach them study skills to establish routines and teach organizational skills by starting at home with self-help skills or daily living activities. And also teach life skills for independence. So we want that our children can perform self-care activities and other daily living activities on their own. And always remember that consistency is the key. Okay, for the parents as well, you need to collaborate with the school and educators. So how do you do this? You have to get an idea about the school's policies. So get to know the do's and don'ts of the school so that you and your child will be on the right track. Also have an open communication with the school and the teachers. I often advise my teachers to treat the parents as allies, not enemies. And also, I advise this to the parents. Dear parents, you can treat the teachers with as allies, not enemies. So with this, you can discuss about certain things without overreacting, or you can have a good conversation. Also, be regular with your teacher follow-up and meetings. So be present in every parent-teacher conference. So because this is a very good opportunity to give feedback. Here in school, I really value feedbacks from parents because by doing so, we can think of ways or solutions to give or deliver better and quality education. And also seek professional help if required. So if things get worse and you do not know how to handle it anymore, do not hesitate to ask for help. There are a lot of people who are willing to help. And also coordinate and collaborate with different professionals and educators. So collaboration is a very important tool for success for any of the educational goals for your children. And also, it's very important to be your child's advocate. Okay, now we come to the case scenarios. So you can just type in the chat box your answers. Okay, so the first one is, Ria comes from a financially struggling family. She has 9 siblings and she rarely eats enough nutritious meals. At school, she cannot focus on the lessons because she is starving. Moreover, she belongs to a class of 60 students, making it hard for her to understand the lessons due to her noisy and disruptive classmates. So how will these factors affect her academic performance? So may I request the participants to just type in your answers. And Shivani, can I ask for your help in
Sure,
reading?
ma'am. So there many of I got one response from Adiba who says it's ADHD.
Okay. So are there other more?
None, ma'am, yet. ID, one of them says ID. The student will have difficulty in understanding the lessons, low performance, student at risk, intellectual deficit, no motivation, probably a slow learner, ASD, lack of concentration,
Okay, so
ID. These are the responses. Student at risk, slow
okay,
learner,
okay.
ASD.
Okay, so this one is more on learners at risk because the factors are like the child comes from a financially struggling family, and then the situations like not having proper nutrition, and then the classroom is not conducive for the learners because of the noisy and disruptive classmates. So again, I can see here at risk. Oh, that's right. That's correct. At risk for nutrition, lack of concentration. Okay. So learning could be affected by different factors, and students cannot concentrate. Okay, that's right. Okay, so those are the things that will be the factors affecting the academic performance of this student. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Next, we have Janus has intellectual disability. He cannot recognize numbers and letters since he was 5 years old. Nevertheless, he is promoted to grade 1. So what academic challenges will he encounter? So you can just type in your answers.
ID, math challenges, numeracy, math and reading. He won't be able to gain math skills.
Okay, that's right.
Math and reading. He cannot cope like the other students. ID, numeracy and literacy challenges, math, writing and language, dyscalculia, difficulties in math, behavioral challenge, dyscalculia. He cannot keep up with other students, difficulty in reading, writing and math, numeracy challenges, prerequisite skills are missing, inferiority, child has ASD, ID, math and English challenge.
Okay.
Child will surely struggle in all subjects.
Okay, so this one is the child is having has intellectual disability, so problems with understanding and recognizing numbers, and then it would affect him like in moving on to a higher grade level. Since he's grade 1, it might be difficult for him to understand lessons on the higher level, which is grade 2. Okay, so next we have, sorry for that. So we have case number 3. Pancho is diagnosed with ADHD. He cannot sit still, disrupts his classmates, blurts out answers, and cannot wait for his turn in play activities. So how will these behaviors affect his academic performance? Your answers, please.
Poor academic performance, he cannot perform well, he cannot do his activities well, he'll have difficulty paying attention, finishing a task and concentration, lack of focus, it will be hard for him to listen and focus, unable to complete homework, poor attention, self-management would be affected, lack of attention, disturbance in class, easily distracted, cannot perform well and cannot finish the task, He'll have difficulties in focusing, low level of performance, poor social communication, and cannot complete the classwork, social problems, classroom disruptions,
Okay.
affect paying attention, absorption of knowledge would be difficult, social behavior unable to complete tasks.
Okay, so since this child is having difficulties with attention as well as impulsivity, it would be hard for him, especially during discussions or during classes. He may disrupt the classroom also, and this would make him like this would make his classmates get mad at him as well because of those behaviors, and also it would affect his performance in different subjects because he's not able to do them properly because of, again, inattention and then hyperactivity and impulsivity. Okay, so we have the next scenario. Sorry. Okay, so Sacha is diagnosed with ASD. He is obsessed with spinning things, lining up toys, and listening to Cocomelon songs 10 times a day that hinder her learning. She also throws tantrums whenever her car takes a different route to school. So how do these behaviors affect her academic performance?
Concentration lapse, lack of concentration, slow in academics, cannot concentrate, repetitive behaviors, academic difficulties, may not be able to learn new things, lack of learning, lack of focus, lack of concentration, lack of understanding things. She'll not be finishing her tasks on time,
Okay.
lack of sitting tolerance, lack of motivation to do schoolwork, cannot concentrate on new topics, behavioral problems, new learning would be difficult, lack of focus, lack of understanding, find a hard time setting priorities, inflexible behavior, inferiority complex, sensory processing issues, attention deficit, lack of learning, cannot concentrate, divergent thoughts, lack of flexibility.
Okay, so thank you very much for your answers. You have given very substantial answers. Okay, so for this one, Sacha is having manifestations of excesses, meaning this obsession with things, spinning things, and lining up. And also, she has deficits like she is inflexible with situations or activities. So these behaviors would affect her academic performance, especially in completing or doing activities because of certain rigidity with a task. She may be not able to transition from one activity to another because she wants to spend her time more on doing things that is pleasurable for her. Okay, so this would affect her general academic performance. Okay, so that would be all for the case scenarios. Now, we move on to our summary and takeaways. So first is in terms of disability. So every neurodevelopmental disorder is unique. Again, no two children with the same condition are alike. Therefore, assessment is very crucial to really identify the specific characteristics, especially the strengths and the weaknesses of these children, for us to be able also to design and implement particular interventions and programs, and also to identify the management strategies and techniques that would be effective for the child. Also, we should avoid labeling and stigmatizing the disability. Classifications are there to be able to identify the different strengths and weaknesses, but not to limit their ability. And also, classifications are made to be able to identify also the support and services needed by each of the particular conditions. In terms of education, we should avoid templating intervention. This means that if this particular intervention or program works for child A, it doesn't mean that it would also work for child B. Again, going back to assessment, it's very important to do it. And a proper and thorough assessment is very very important to be able to identify what really the issues or the challenges the child is having, for us to make individualized programs for the child. And also, we should implement modifications and accommodation strategies if and when necessary. So if a child is having problems with academics and have limiting conditions wherein he cannot cope with the regular curriculum, then we have to make certain modification and accommodation strategies. But if the child can cope with the academic demands, then we let him be. For the family, we should include the family and the child in the goal development. We should include the child in the decision making if the child is capable of deciding. Otherwise, it's the role of the parents to decide for the child. And then include the family in the intervention program. So collaboration among members of the family is very important. The intervention program should be consistent for each of the family members, because if we implement a program which is, for example, that the mother is strict but the father is not, it would confuse the child even more. So instead of doing good to your child, you might be doing harm to him. So that's why collaboration is very important for an intervention to be effective and sustainable. So that ends my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Teacher Leah, for an insightful workshop on helping our participants to understand what are the academic challenges that children with different disabilities can face. Now, I'll take you all through the upcoming workshops. Teacher Leah, if you could stop sharing, I'll take them through, and then we'll begin the question and answer session in a moment. Thank you so much. This is to inform you all that now the upcoming events are: how would we be able to identify the early signs of academic difficulties in our classroom? It is on the 18th of November. And the next workshop is on 25th of November, where we will be talking about how one can determine proficiency levels for literacy and numeracy skills in children with academic challenges. The speaker for them would be Ms. Lea Gracilla. Stay tuned for them, and the links will be posted in the chat box. Do register and book your slots. You can share the care by forwarding the links to others who can benefit from these topics. Hoping to see you all in the upcoming sessions. Now, I will take you through the platform of ability, where you can have a hang of the resources as well as about how you could post your questions. Then the first step is, when you get into the login option, you can log in with your account and you can go to the events section. So when you get into the events section, there are certain sub-tabs of event details, questions, resources, and related events. In the event details, the date, time, about the speaker, what are your takeaways going to be there is mentioned. Then in the questions, if you have any questions that you would like to ask the expert speaker, you could post them in this section, and the questions with most upvotes will be prioritized. There's another tab that is the resources tab, where all the resources relevant to that workshop would be available. You can like, share, and comment the resources. If you would like to attend more events or know about the upcoming events, you can get into the related events tab and you would have the upcoming events and you can register for them. To know what all workshops have you registered, you can get into your My Events option and you will know what other workshops that you had previously registered for. Now, let me introduce you to the new initiative by Ability, where you can become a resource creator. In this, you can share this with over 40,000 educators and parents. It's a three-step process where if there are resources that you have created or curated, once you create your profile, you can upload those resources. Once you upload, you will be receiving the feedback and ratings from the community, and you can build followers to your profile. If you wish to be a resource creator, the type form for it is being posted in the chat box. Another initiative by Ability is where you can become an Ability Inclusion Champion. We have over 400 volunteers that have taken their first step to join Ability in its mission. You can share free and amazing resources, tools with the community. You can run local and offline support groups. You can lead initiatives to spread awareness about special needs. You can meet new friends and learn from each other. To become an Ability Inclusion Champion, the form link would be posted in the chat box. Teacher Lea, are you now ready for the first question from our participants?
Yes, I am. Sure.
Okay. So we have a participant who, her name is Maria Luz Lourdes. She wants to know, when we are talking about all these challenges, what is the age range for detecting the academic challenges?
Okay, so there are different age ranges for detecting these conditions. First is intellectual disability can be detected in the newborn screening tests. Okay, so and developmental delays can be detected as early as 2 years old using the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale, while autism can be diagnosed as early as 1.8 years old. And then in terms of those with ADHD, the symptoms usually appear before the age of 12, so they can already be diagnosed before that age range. So those are the age ranges for the different conditions that I have discussed.
Different conditions have different early signs that are going to be visible. Now we move on to the other question. We have a question by Martinez Paula, who states that because of academic difficulties, children sometimes tend to repeat classes and they can get demotivated and do not receive the support from parents and siblings. What is your take on helping these children who feel demotivated because of repeating a class?
Okay, so first, we should check for the reason why the student failed. Okay, the achievement level might be low, or it could be a sign of other learning issues. And according to studies, children who get positive support from their parents or their teachers perform well in school. And if it is our role as teachers to provide support to them. So how can we do it? So we should look at their strengths more rather than other weaknesses. For example, the child is having problems with math, for example. So instead of always saying that, oh, you're wrong or you're wrong, we should also focus on the positive aspects, the very little changes or progress they are making. And also, we should give credit to the process. Not, for example, in performing word problem solving skills. So you need to, for example, in math, there are certain processes where the child needs to answer. For example, there is a given and then the solution and the final answer. we do not only give points for the final product or for the final answer. We also give points or credits to the process, so that by doing so, we are encouraging the child to perform better, or we are uplifting the morale of the child. We are helping with the self-esteem of the child, because the child knows that he has the certain weaknesses, but then again, the teacher recognizes his abilities. And also, we can do this by giving social praises and gestures like patting him on the back. That means that he did something good or something right. And also, we can spread awareness in terms of the parents who are lacking support with their children. We can also give some like this awareness, like parenting seminars, and also we can do counseling to for them to be able to appreciate their child's little progress. And we can also give psychoeducation and training and seminars for these parents. So that would be my tip or view for that particular situation.
Encouraging and psychoeducating the
Yes.
parents is very, very important. On the similar lines, we have a question, ma'am. When we talk about the encouragement of children, there are times that children do not participate in the activities, and especially when the subject is uninteresting to them. How can children with academic difficulties be encouraged to participate more?
Okay. So first, we have to determine the reason why is the child not participating. Okay, does the child have certain conditions causing him or her to have a lack of focus on task, or does the child do not participate because the subject is too difficult for him, or are there environmental factors which affect the performance of the child, like does the child have social emotional issues, or personal factors like a certain illness, or because of environmental reasons like he is starving. So these are all factors that could affect the student. That's why if we are able to answer this, we are going to at least know the reasons, and then it would help also if we really know the child. So we have to observe, we have to ask parents and classmates why is the child having difficulty with that particular subject. Okay, so and also by doing so, since we already know what he is good at and what is his weaknesses, we can already provide the intervention necessary to address the child's issue. So that would be my view on that situation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Moving on to the next question, where we have been discussing about the classification of disabilities and what is their impact on the academic challenges. Virginia and the other participants have a question that if the child's IQ is under 75, what would you classify that as? And how is intellectual deficit different from a learning disability?
Okay, so according to the severity classification for intellectual disability, so the mild individual disability IQ is 50 to 70. So if the child has 75 IQ of 75 or higher, so it would be learning disability. So the intervention would differ because they may be having the same issues, but again we have to really look into the factors affecting it. So if the IQ level is of that the one with intellectual disability, like mild ID, then we have to give interventions that would really address the issue. So that would be my answer to that.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. And when we are talking about ID on those terms of another disability, we have questions, a lot of them on ADHD. So when we are talking about ADHD and in general, all the other disabilities also, then Laddie wants to know that when children are having these challenges, will these challenges get better as they grow when they are placed with the fellow peers of same age without any intervention? Would they be developing through social skills?
Okay, so again, as I have discussed, intervention is very important. So these children are having these issues already early in life. So what more if we just let it go? I mean, we do not give interventions, it might get worse. So early intervention and intervention in general is very crucial. And also, these conditions manifest before the age of 12, and it could go a long way until adulthood if it is not addressed. So most of these learners, especially the ones with ADHD, at first, they may be very hyperactive at a younger age, but later on, they will just have inattention, or they manifest symptoms for attention deficit disorder only. But it doesn't mean that we just let them be. Okay, so I highly suggest that we should all still give intervention to them, especially at a very early age. So that is the actually the role of early intervention. The earlier we address the issues, the better would be the outcome.
So true, ma'am. Early intervention is the key to go. Now, when we are talking about providing intervention, there are times that assistants and shadow teachers are needed. So there's a participant, Aurora and others, who wanted to know that if we do not have assistant or shadow teachers in school, how can we help moderate to severe cases prosper or develop in the regular classroom? What can be done to help these children?
Okay, so in my discussion, I mentioned there that children having severe, or especially those who have profound conditions, are not candidates for placement in the regular classroom because they have a different kind of needs that the regular classroom could not provide. So that is why they are placed in the specialized education services, most of them in the self-contained classes. So with assessment, this is the beauty of assessment. So with assessment, we are able to determine also not only the condition of the child, but also the placement stuff, meaning we are able to place the child where he can fully function. So again, we have to really know the child. We have to do assessment in order to properly place them, because if we are going to place them inappropriately, it would be really hard for them, because um, as much as we want to help the child perform, sometimes it's really up to us if we are going to help in a good or proper way, or our actions would be detrimental to them.
Very important that the support has to be given to these children, and then post assessment we figure out what is the requirements of the child.
Yes.
We have a question that when we talk about assessments and suggesting parents to go ahead for it, there are times parents are in denial. There's a question Maria, who wants to know that how can we encourage parents to accept the situation of their child when they are having any limitation?
Okay, so the issue on the acceptance of the parents is really a very hard it's a very hard situation. So if you have attended Doc Grace's talk about parental acceptance, uh, maybe in our part as teachers, we should not be judgmental to the parents, since we do not know what they are going through, and we should also not invalidate their feelings. So imagine yourself being on their position or in their place. It would be really hard for you. So we just do not tell that this parent is in denial, because they really need to experience those stages in the grieving process. So I say so, and also we have to really communicate well. We should have an open communication with the parents, and by validating their feelings and emotions, and by talking to them not as professionals or someone who is more knowledgeable of the conditions and all those things. We should understand them as well, and do our best in helping the child, hoping that by doing these things, the parents would appreciate what you are doing to his or her child. And later on, you will just notice that this difficult parent, is opening up to you, and therefore helping the child or helping herself as well to accept the situation. So that would be it.
Building a rapport with the parent is extremely
Yes,
important,
very
and then
important.
giving them the true picture really helps. So when this is about parents, and then we have a question from Sadia Shabnam ma'am, who wants to understand from your perspective that should the students of different disability levels be grouped separately in a class so that the teachers can take more care and attention of them, or would grouping make it worse? What is your take on this?
Okay, so it depends upon the situation and upon our goals or targets. So if we want the child to have social skills, then it is advisable to place the child in a setting where there are regular students also. But if our goal is to really, for example, to teach skills on the level of the students, then we can group the students into a particular group, or what we call the self-contained classes. But it depends also upon the ability and capability of the child. Okay, so this is also the problem with inclusion, because as much as we want to place the child in the regular setting, sometimes it doesn't help because the child cannot cope. So instead of doing good for the child, we are doing harm for these children. So I suggest that we really have to look at each and every child that we have, and really identify which child could be placed in the regular classroom, and the children that should be in the self-contained classes. And also with inclusive education, there are steps or procedures wherein we first group the children to be able to give them lessons for the skill acquisition and mastery. And when the time comes that they already are fluent and they can already generalize, maybe we could also place these children into the regular classroom setting.
It all depends on the level of the child and how the child is responding to the interventions. Yes, when we're
Yes.
talking about an inclusive school setup, ma'am, there's a question from Nabiha who wants to know that when these children are in an inclusive school, or if we have a child with intellectual disabilities, for example, would they be bullied? Or when they are being provided with negative comments, what can we do to support them? And there are times parents themselves give negative comments to their children. So how can she support these kind of children in that environment?
Okay, so again, most of these children do not manifest socially in appropriate behaviors in different situations. That's why they are bullied. So in this case, what we can do is uh, to make the classmates, the teachers aware of the condition of the child. So in my experience, because we did this in my previous school, I taught there. I have a special class which is a self-contained class, and I also have students who are put in the placed in the mainstream classroom. So what I did was I I went to the classroom with the child, and then I explained to the whole class that I told the teachers, the classmates that okay, I introduced the child. This is my student, and he has these strengths, he has these weaknesses, and you should not be afraid of him because he will not hurt you, or he will not put you in danger. So by doing so, by explaining to the people around him, you are helping the child to be understood. The children are being bullied because the other people do not understand the child. So it is our role to make the people aware, around him aware of the condition of the child, for them to be able to understand the child better. So in my experience, I'm very lucky that that particular student was loved by his classmates. Actually, they told me that you know what, ma'am, your student is very good at this, very good at computers. We do not even know that he can do this and that. So by doing such things, we can help the child not uh, not just uh, prevent him from being bullied, but also help him be understood and loved by his classmates and peers.
Psychoeducating the peers is very important so that they actually understand and can empathize with the child rather than bullying the child.
Yes.
When we are talking about the conditions, ma'am, there's a question from one of the participants, Malwa, who wants to know that there are times children with ADHD or other disabilities go undetected. Is there a possibility that they can still progress?
I okay. So the problem here is with the early diagnosis, I think. So if the child is not properly diagnosed, again, the intervention might not be effective. So that's why it's very important also to really ask for support, and maybe we could ask for support from other teachers, or from the principal, or from other higher authorities to make a certain program, or ask for support also from the government to really help with the assessment of children, because it's one of the common problems in general classroom setting, or especially in public school. Students do not get proper assessment. That's why even if you do a lot of interventions, a lot of implementing, a lot of strategies, still it is not working. So we really have to make efforts in looking for services that could offer assessment, so that we would really address the problem, and we would help the child perform better at school. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Addressing the problem is very, very important. And when we are talking about providing accommodations and modifications to these children, we have a question by Asha Sharma, who asks that do you believe that by providing accommodations for children with limitations or special needs, the students who are bright and do not require the additional support, would they be negatively affected and the class becomes boring for them? What's your take on this?
Okay, so there are two aspects to this question. I want to point out first that accommodation for children with limitations or special needs is very necessary. Okay, so we should give accommodations and modifications to children who need it. Meaning, if the child can perform with academics in the regular classroom, if he can cope with it, then let the child be. But if the child has so many limiting conditions affecting his academic performance, then it is good to provide accommodation and modification strategies. The other aspect is that if the child is or has high intellectual functioning, meaning the child could be gifted. So we can also give accommodations, but the opposite of the accommodation that is given for those with low intellectual functioning. Meaning, we can give accommodations such as enrichment activities. So since this child is performing above the level of the regular children, then we could give activities that are enriching or enhancing the skills of that particular child. By doing so, the child will be challenged by the difficulty level that is matching his cognitive ability, and also again, placement is very important. So we should be mindful of where to place the child properly so that he will get the necessary intervention needed. And also, it doesn't mean that if the child is very advanced, we just let him be. So we still have to do some interventions. For example, the child is very good at academics but might be having difficulties with communication, with social interaction. So we also give interventions to them. And also, these children who has high mental ability should also adjust and adapt. So that's a skill that they should also learn along the way.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for throwing insights onto this question. We have a case-specific question now, ma'am, by Rosalia. She has twins who have been diagnosed with ADHD and ASD separately. They are in grade 1 and are doing modules at home. So she is wondering that should she request for different sections for them, and at the same time she feels that if they are in the same section they are having each other's back in doing some activities. So what's your take in supporting these twins?
Can you repeat the situation
Sure,
again,
sure.
Shivani?
So she has twins. One of them is diagnosed with ADHD and the other with ASD. They are in grade 1 and they're doing modules at home. So whenever they are studying, they tend to copy each other's answers. So she wants to ask you, should she request for different sections for them or in the school, or should they be in the same section? And she feels that if they are in the same section, they have each other's support. So what do you suggest that has to be done for them?
Okay, so first, let us observe first or know why the child is why the other child is copying the activity of the other child. So by doing so, we could understand what the problem is really is. In terms of placement, I guess actually if the child is having difficulties with academics, and then it's hard for them to I think again we should look at our goals. So what is our goals for the child? So is it really about academics, or do we need like certain skills that we want the child to learn? So in this case, if it's more practical to put them together in one class, uh, then maybe you can do it. Or if it's hard for them to, maybe in this case the other child is affecting the other child negatively. So it really depends upon the situation or the reason why the child is doing or performing such behavior. So I think we really need to see the different reasons. So for me, it's hard to determine why the behavior is happening, and since the information is very limited, I cannot give a comprehensive view about this situation.
Right. The observation is very important in this case as to see why are they being dependent and actually what would work for the twins if they are separated from each other. So a little observation is very important in this case. We'll take the last question for today, Leah ma'am. We were talking about being a child's advocate. So can you throw light on that? That what does it mean to be a child's advocate, and is it helpful or counterproductive? Will it make the child dependent on us?
Okay. So our goal as parents and educator is to really help the child attain his or her maximum potential. But we cannot do this if we do things for the child. So advocating for the child is so different with doing things for the child. Okay, so if again you attended Teacher Gina's workshop, she mentioned there that our greatest mistake would be doing everything for our children. So we have to really separate our views on how to advocate. How to advocate for the child. We advocate for the child. It means that we support the child. We support the child. We see the child's strengths. We we address the child's challenges, but we do not do things for the child, because by doing so you are not helping the child. Okay, so independence is very, very important. So learning things for the child to be independent is very important. This is a case also for some parents, especially in my experience now having online classes. Our the mistakes would always be, since very, or we are not patient with the child. For example, the child would answer, but then again the parent would butt in and then answer for the child. So that scenario, that situation, we are not advocating for the child. We are doing things for the child, and that won't help the child attain his or her maximum potential. So we need to really define what advocate means and what dependency means. So our goal is for the child to be independent. We should not do everything for them.
Thank you so much, Leah ma'am, for this question's answer. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for being so patient in answering all the questions from our participants. Now, before we end the session, I would like to ask Leah ma'am her experience of today's workshop.
Okay, so I have a lot of fun, and thank you so much for having me as your speaker for today. I really appreciate everyone's inputs in the scenario section of this talk, and also I just want to leave a particular quote coming from Winston Churchill. He said that continuous effort, not strength nor intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential. So to be able to help a child unleash his or her true potential, continuous effort or consistency among parents, families, therapists, and educators is needed. So on top of having consistency, we should also have persistence and passion. And we should love what we do. Because when we love what we do, the work seems effortless. And also, along with this persistence, with passion, with consistency, we should also have a goal to keep us going. So again, dear participants, my message would be, may you keep the fire of passion burning, and may you remain committed in making a difference in the lives of these children. So again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Leah ma'am. What a beautiful note by you for ending the session. Now, I would like to remind the participants of the upcoming workshops that we have in the coming weeks. We have how can we identify the early signs of academic difficulties in the classroom on 18th of November. And on 25th of November, we have how can we determine the proficiency levels for literacy and numeracy skills in children with academic challenges. They'll be taken by Ms. Lea Gracilla. The links of it would be posted in the chat box. Do book your slots. Wishing you all a very good night. Until we meet again, a big bye from Team Ability.